don't expect everyone in the agency to be a business developer. You're putting them in a place of discomfort if you're saying, look, next time you're out, ask someone if we can get an intro or see if you can generate some leads. What you're better off doing is asking the people in their role. So if you're at a brand experience agency, ask the producers, what events have you seen out there that are really fantastic and creative? Ask a copywriter, what's the best bit of copy that you've seen in a campaign? And that way you're getting people to respond to you with things that they love, things that they've seen that are in their area of expertise. And then the business developer can take that on and sort of add it into the wish list.
My name's Mike Lander, and you're listening to Higgle, the B2B Sales Club podcast, where we bring you actionable insights about sales RFPs, negotiations, and difficult procurement discussions from sales leaders, brand leaders, and procurement leaders. Please subscribe to get updates when new episodes are released. Rich, thanks ever so much for joining me on Higgle, the B2B Sales Club podcast.
Hey, Mike. Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, pleasure. So we go back a long way now, and I would honestly say you've become a great friend, a great person to bounce ideas off, and just generally a good-spirited, fun person to be around in biz dev.
Likewise, my man.
Thank you. So I'm really looking forward to this. It's always great when you talk to kind of old friends about business development. So Rich, tell us about basically who you are, what you do, and something unusual about yourself.
Cool. Okay. Well, so I'm Rich McCarty. I guess all I've ever done is business development. I get my kicks out of seeing relationships flourish between agencies and clients. I love finding new opportunities where people don't see them. And it's all I've ever done, right? You know?
Yeah.
Maybe we'll talk about how I got into it in a bit, but
we will. Yeah.
That's what I do. I work for various agencies. I support them as part of a kind of collective approach to new business. I'm also the co-founder of the BD 100, which is a community for business developers across the agency landscape. There were 27,000 or so agencies in this country alone. What's unusual about me? Loads of stuff, probably, but I think something that people don't know maybe about me, because I don't really talk about it that much, but I am a Guinness World Record holder. Something that I did with the brilliant Michelle Morgan and Kate Thompson a few years ago now. We broke a Guinness World Record for the most people to join a accredited mental health awareness lesson.
Wow.
Online, over 3,000 people tuned in. And we did that because, you know, this world, this job, it's tough. And so we brought people together because, you know, it puts people under mental strain in what we're in. And there's plenty of burnout in the agency sector. So we did something to help and to shine a light on that.
Good. Yeah. And it is. I mean, everyone says, you know, work is tough. Yes, work is tough. I think one of the problems with business development, and we've talked about this a lot, is, you know, it genuinely can be lonely because often there's one senior lead person who's trying to drum up new business. And who the hell do you talk to? Who do you talk to when it's all gone a bit pear-shaped? So before we get into that, because we'll get into more of that later on, but what's your backstory, Rich? So how did you get into biz dev? What happened?
Well, I think, and I would say this about most people that are in business development, I think it's naturally in there. It's an innate ability, but then it takes something to sort of light the spark.
Yeah.
And I think I wasn't a natural business developer in terms of the mechanics of what you have to do, because, you know, back in the day, the phone was absolutely crucial. Even the fax machine was crucial. And we have so many more digital tools now, but I wouldn't say I was natural on the phone. I was a natural relationship builder, which is crucial. But on the phone, I think I had a bit of a fear. But I got into, I did quite a bit of work working for the BT operator service and had to handle 999 calls and lots of quite difficult calls on the phone. And actually that sort of broke down any fear. That just got rid of it completely. And then I was at a real crossroads in 1997. I'd done some pretty hardcore cold calling jobs in the mid 90s. And I've seen that in lots of people as well. Lots of business developers who really know their stuff would say they've done door to door, they've done cold calling, they've done all of that kind of sales stuff. And anyway, in 97, I walked into an agency called Spectrum at the time. It's now called Jack Morton. And I was just sat there in reception. They were looking for a sales exec. And part of the recruitment process was to pretend that you'd been at an event over the weekend. You'd met someone who, let's say, was a high prospect, a CMO of a business, and you had to call them up on Monday and say it was nice chatting to them and could we get together for a meeting? And that scenario, frankly, still rolls out today. So in 1997, I played that out with the person who was hiring me by calling him from a room next door to the interview room. And that was that. I got the job and I started a career as a business developer working for agencies.
So just out of interest, does the phone still work?
Oh, my God. Do you know what? People talk about this now and they're like, oh, hardly anyone uses a phone or makes phone calls. And I think people hide behind email now and LinkedIn. And, you know, email and LinkedIn, Christ, I use them daily, right? They're on my dashboard, of course, right? But I think using the phone is like a nice thing for people. So I make phone calls all the time. Yesterday alone, I probably made about 50 phone calls. Wow. Had about 15 chats with senior people. Just what's on your plate? How can I help? What's going on? You've got to put the graft in.
Rich, how do you? That's remarkable. How do you? You're so unassuming. So you spoke to 50. Let's just take the 15 senior CMO people. Yeah. How do you? I mean, no matter where they are in an organization, kind of like who the organization is, but just what do you do to get through to new people that basically don't know you, you don't know them? How does that work? It's always been a problem of mine. I've always been pretty shit at it, to be quite frank.
Okay. What, you mean actually sort of how do you get through?
Literally, how do you find the number? How do you get through the kind of like the gatekeepers? And how do you start a conversation with someone that you're interrupting their day? So how do you get over that?
Okay, so I think you've got to put this in context, right? None of these people that I'm calling up are people that I don't know.
Right, okay. So that's number one. These are known people.
These are known people. So people always say, how do you make cold calls? And I always say, well, I don't make a single cold call. Right. Because either people know me already or I think they should know me. And therefore it's not cold, right? So
brilliant.
So much of this is about a state of mind, okay? If you really strongly believe that someone should hear you out for a few minutes, then it ain't a cold call, right?
Right. Okay.
By definition. So if people can get into that mindset, then great. Anyway, look, I didn't speak to 15 CMOs yesterday. I spoke to 15 people that I wanted to speak to for various reasons. Some of them agency CEOs, some of them head of client relationships at agencies, some of them in production roles, etc. But, you know, someone pointed out to me that there are, in fact, it was my business coach that pointed out how few working days and working hours there are till Christmas and said every hour counts till about December the 6th when no one's going to care anymore. Yep. So I just hit the phone and went, right, every minute, every call, everything matters. But so to go back to your original question was around how do you get to know? Well, the process is you get out and meet people at events and you have a chat with people at places like MadFest or Campaign Live or Future of Media. I mean, I would have been to about 7 different events this month by the time we get to the end of October.
Wow.
So you've got to prepare, you've got to go and meet people, you've got to have a chat with them about something that's relevant, you've got to listen to what they're talking about and pick up on something that's relevant. One of the key things is you've got to ask someone right up front, whether it's in person or on the phone, are you okay to chat for a minute?
Yeah.
Right? And I think people launch into what they want to
because
say.
they're nervous. They've got anxiety inside them.
Yeah. So the first thing that I think everyone should always say is, how are you? Have you got a minute?
Yeah.
It's disarming. And if they haven't got a minute, you say, well, when have you got a minute then?
Yeah.
So it's just conversational. I think it's as simple as that. And, you're building relationships that sometimes trigger something really quickly, sometimes trigger things long term, sometimes never trigger anything. And that's the point. You've got to be in it to just genuinely want to build relationships with people that could go absolutely nowhere other than being a friend.
Exactly right. Or if not a friend, a contact, someone that you know. So, Rich, I think there's no surprise that we've become friends in many ways, that we share quite a few kind of like principles in common, I think. And
yeah,
okay, so 2 months ago, my pipeline had one thing in it. And I'm like,
so you put your feet up, and had a cup of tea.
So, correct. Right. I thought, never mind. The phone will ring one day. It'll be fine. No, clearly, as we both do, Rich. Now, it's got, 12 things in it.
Good
now,
man.
That's not an accident. That's like I've been to events, I've spoken at events, I've sat on panels, I've kind of hustled my way into getting to meet people. I've done all the stuff that and I think the really important thing that you said here, Rich, is that you don't know where it's going to go. If you approach it with genuine integrity, I just want to get to know people who are interesting people. And if they're the right kinds of interesting people, good things will happen eventually.
Absolutely
and that
right.
tends to work.
Absolutely right. And, again, it might sound a bit fluffy, but, there is some karma. There is some serendipity.
There is.
Right? There are some mechanics around it. You go to the right events that are your kind of thing, where you're going to meet the right kind of people to do business with and get along with.
Exactly.
Then the rest is actually bloody hard work. And, I think I wrote a whole list of things that I've learned in my career on some sort of celebratory post on LinkedIn to mark 10 years or I don't know. But one of them was activity gets results. Yeah. And if you're sat there with one thing in your pipeline, it ain't just going to magic itself up. So get your finger out and get calling, emailing, hustling, meeting, talking.
Yeah.
Because
going to events, Rich, I think everyone would agree, events are back, in person's back.
Absolutely right. Crikey, I'm exhausted this month. Like, I'm leaving after this. I'm going to one event, then an evening event, then another, then sport leaders at Twickenham tomorrow. Then I'm cutting sport leaders to do another thing tomorrow evening, and then I'm at an agency hackers event on Thursday.
Wow.
And that's on the back of Campaign Live 2 weeks ago and the Future of Media before that.
Yeah. And MadFest, you were at for what, 3 days?
MadFest for 3 days. And you've got Mad Up North coming next February, which I'm speaking at. And then, I go to some of the Oyster Catchers events, which are superb. There's a singular event that's being run by Digitas next 2 weeks' time. Yeah.
And so for anyone listening that's in business development, I think tune into what Rich is saying about going to events where the right people are there. Don't go to the events whereby, for example, in agency world, a lot of people go to Brighton SEO, which is a brilliant event. I know Resignal go, and it's got amazing speakers. And it's great if you want to meet other SEO people. If you're an SEO, that nothing wrong with that. That's fine. But you won't meet clients there or prospects. So you've got to go somewhere where your potential prospects might be. I went to an amazing event last week called CRO Connected. The organizer, Josh, very kindly invited me. And I sat on a panel with David Meikle. And we talked about basically dealing with procurement and the triangle of doom. And it was great to be invited. And those people were CROs, chief revenue officers, some of which run multi-billion-dollar organizations and some of which run early-stage growth companies. But they're the right kind of people to talk to. And it's not so much even that they might be my clients and I'm desperate to get in front of them. They're nice people to get to know. They've got interesting things to say. But they'll also talk to other people who might have a problem that maybe I can solve. And they go, I saw this bloke, Mike, the other week. Really interesting conversation about X, Y, and Z. Maybe you ought to give him a call. And in our world, Rich, that's what happens, isn't it? You do get some random things turning up where someone spoke to someone, and then you get a call or an email.
Yeah. And, that's what we're always trying to make happen. As soon as anyone says the words or any combination of procurement, negotiation, rate card, or pricing, I just say, you need Mike Lander.
Thank you, Rich. That's very kind. But that's an important point, is people have to know when it's time to call Rich.
Yeah,
so you have to be really clear about what you focus on. I'm with you with that. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think, everyone has in their head certain words. Well, maybe it's just the way my head's put on, but if someone says certain words to me, it will trigger people. It will trigger a place where I've met someone, and I'll go, you need to talk to such and such.
Exactly.
I think those very giving networkers, I think a few people have put on the recommendation thing that you can do on LinkedIn, where they just say they're a generous networker. Yeah. And that means everything to me, because it means that you're not just in it for your own business or whoever you're representing. You're in it just generally to help and to point people in the right direction.
Exactly. And if you give more than you get, then you've probably had a good day.
Absolutely. Give to get back.
Yeah, definitely. So talk to me, Rich, about your kind of immediate and best source of new business in terms of clients, dormant clients, referrals. Just talk about that.
I think whenever I start working with an agency founder or CEO who needs a consultant business developer, which is kind of what I do, they're always calling me when they're typically they'll say, we're not ready to hire anyone yet. We've probably exhausted our existing referrals from our current client base.
Yeah,
we need someone to start expanding out, so that we can get some more conversations going, more meetings, more briefs, more clients. That's when people call me.
Yeah.
And the first thing I start examining with them, when I'm getting to know them it's like, who are your current clients and who do you want to work with? Who do you think who's on your wish list?
Exactly.
Because then you're always matching up loads of agencies will throw in the sort of brands that they've always wanted to work with. And that's great, but it has to sort of marry up with the persona of people that they're right to work with. And where those subsets cross over, that's the pure magic. Because if I'm trying to open up a conversation with someone at a brand that is on the wish list of the agency, but I truly believe there is a reason for the two to come together, that's heaven for me.
Exactly.
And then you've got to make the connections between what they are currently in terms of their purpose, their mission, values, etc., what they've got in their armory of case studies, who they want to work with. Does someone in that brand actually sit within my existing contacts? If they do, fantastic. I can make that intro.
Yep.
If they don't, then I'm looking for the nearest connection to that person. Hence, back to our original conversation, it's never a cold intro. Because exactly. I might ask someone, can you make that intro to that person? Because I want to introduce them to this agency.
Yep.
And I'm doing that all the time.
Exactly. So I spoke to a brilliant guy this week called Andy Bounds. Andy Bounds is another guest like you on the podcast. His comes out, I think, middle end of November. And there were two things that occurred to me. One's a bit random to this, but it really resonated with me. And the other was about referrals. So the first thing is he said exactly what you're saying, which is basically he doesn't do cold calls either. He asks for referrals. Who do you know that might need someone like me? And then he said, because I said to him, Andy, at the end, I'm like, maybe I'll write to you and ask you if you've got anyone that has a problem like the kind of things that I solve, and maybe they could talk to me. He said, Mike, absolutely. He said, do one thing for me. He said, when you write to me, talk about the afters. I went, the what? And he went, the afters. After you've worked with Mike, you will grow your sales, not be fearful of procurement, and have more profitable deals. And I'm like, nice. That's clever. Simple, clever. It's the afters.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to think that the afters of working with me are that they've got more clients, They got a bigger pipeline. And if we've done it really well, they would have a full-time business developer because they've grown so much that I can't support it anymore.
Brilliant. Isn't it a simple thing?
It's a beautiful process whereby I'm with them for a certain point in the journey.
Yeah.
Andy Bounds sounds like a good person. You're going to intro me?
I will, definitely. Andy Bounds is a top guy.
He's Andy Outbounds, is he?
No, but maybe you should be. Andy Bounds, brilliant guy, brilliant. So, next part, Rich. Talk to us about, I think we've both faced this. Certain agency leaders think that they're going to get, right, I've got 30 people in my agency. I'm going to get all of them to generate at least one lead. And that way I'll have 30 leads. And out of 30, I'm bound to get 3 or 4 real clients and it'll all be good. Why is that often a problem?
All right. If that agency was a film content business with 30 business developers, would you ask those 30 business developers to go out and make a film?
You might do, but you'd be a bit crazy if you did.
Yeah. So I think a lot of agency leaders think that you can get the business development process working throughout the business. And it's just not that simple because we're all born with different talents.
Exactly.
Event producers are producers, strategists do their thing, amazing minds. Filmmakers, designers, graphic designers, we've all got our place and role within the agency life. And business developers have their gift too.
Yeah.
So it's kind of nurture your business developers, but don't expect everyone in the agency to be a business developer.
Correct.
It's a real, you're putting people in you're putting them in a place of discomfort. If you're saying, look, next time you're out, ask someone if we can get an intro or see if you can generate some leads. It just isn't. What you're better off doing is asking the people in their role. So if you're at a brand experience agency, ask the producers, what events have you seen out there that are really fantastic and creative? To ask a copywriter, what's the best bit of copy that you've seen in a campaign? And that way you're getting people to respond to you with things that they love, things that they've seen that are in their area of expertise.
Exactly.
And then the business developer can take that on and sort of add it into the wish list.
Exactly.
And I think that's a much smarter and nicer way of doing business development and trying to get an essence of business development spread across the agency.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I think you can take that stuff, like it might be a brilliant creative campaign or a piece of copy, and you can take it to people that you're networking with, potential prospects, and talk to them about it. It gives you something to talk about that's really different. Yeah. Because I always think whenever I talk to someone that might one day eventually be a client, maybe, well, what do they want from me? They want something that's insightful. They want something that they don't know. If you can, and again, this Andy Bounds guy said, if you can teach them something they don't know, they're going to walk away from that conversation richer than when they started.
Yeah.
Because they will. Get richer with Rich McHardy. There you are.
Well, as long as it's sort of, the emotional enrichment.
Emotional enrichment, correct. Not money. Emotional enrichment, correct.
I mean, there should be some revenue in there too. But I like the emotional enrichment.
Definitely. So we're at kind of 23 minutes. So Rich, why don't we kind of wrap this up with, if we were having a coffee in a coffee shop, having this conversation, and there happened to be an agency leader next to us, and she leant over and went, what are your top 3 tips then? We're about 25 people. We got so far. We need to get further. What should we do in terms of new business acquisition? What would your kind of top 3 things be?
Well, I think, all right, top 3 tips. It's hard to get to top 3 tips, but I think, because I can see myself in that situation, I'd start asking them questions.
Right.
And then the tips would probably come, but I'd be asking them, have you got anyone in-house that's doing it?
Right.
What tools are you using? What's your process?
Yeah.
Because then whatever isn't it there, I'd start filling it in.
Yeah.
because my tips are, you have to get out and go to events. We've talked about that.
Definitely.
You have to have a decent digital dashboard. You've got to have your eye on the market. You have to have intel.
Yep.
So I always have Alf Insight open. That is what gives me my daily feed and leads. And it comes in from the publishers as well, like the Drum and Campaign. Yep. You've got to have your eye on what's happening. What agency's been appointed? What CMO's just moved from one brand to the other? So yeah, I guess it's it's constant activity, but with a process.
Yeah.
You've got to plan your time. You've got to consider when is the right time to be speaking to people, when to email them, when to post on LinkedIn, when to go to events.
Yeah.
And be very patient. It's a patient role being a business developer.
Definitely.
But also, I think just a quick mention of the BD100. If you've got a business developer in your team, I would say to those agency leaders, just make sure you get those business developers to tune into the BD100 because it's a community.
Yeah.
It's a community that supports one another and it's growing fast.
Yeah.
And as we said right at the beginning, it's a tough job. You're only as good as the last bit of new business that you've won.
Yeah.
And often, not all CEOs, thankfully, not that many anymore, but there are some leaders and agencies that, they kind of forget very quickly that the business developer generated that relationship maybe years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
And then it comes through to fruition and it's a new client. And yet the pressure's back on the business developer to go and get the next one. And that it shouldn't be forgotten. That
absolutely.
It all begins with something, and it could be just a chat at an event, but they have to start somewhere.
Yeah. And I think that the only thing I'd add in would be around having a point of view. You need to be a thought leader. You've got to have a point of view on what it is that your business does. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, why would people talk to you? Don't be a commodity. Be something that's unique and high value add, where you've got a real point of view on something. And that'll open the conversation.
Yeah. And I think that, indie agencies versus networks, the point of difference of the networks is that they are a network, and a lot of brands, big senior leaders in brands want that.
Yeah.
But if you've made your life to be an independent and niche agency, then totally lean into the niche, be the niche,
exactly,
and shout it from the rooftops.
Rich, it's been amazing. I knew it would. It's bound to be. Because it's you, mate.
It's been. I've loved it. It's gone really fast.
It's gone really fast. We're at 27 minutes. So, Rich, where can people find out more about you?
Well, mostly on LinkedIn, actually, because my sort of website is like a classic. Anyone who's in agency land's website, they'll always moan about and saying they're not that good. But it's got some good testimonials on there. But mostly, just go on LinkedIn. I live on LinkedIn. It's got everything about what I do. I love working with agency leaders that are hungry to grow. And yeah, give me a shout.
Brilliant. Rich, it's been amazing. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks for listening to Higgle, the B2B Sales Club podcast series with your host, Mike Lander. Please subscribe so that you'll catch all the next episodes.